in my experience, and I know it's true for you, I don't want to spend time with people who are just reaching out to me because they see an extractive opportunity, be that knowledge or access or money. If a friend wants knowledge, I'm happy to provide it, but I don't perceive that we have a strictly transactional relationship. Or said differently, there's generosity in the relationship. So if there's no generosity, it's just transactional. If it's transactional, I don't want it. I got plenty of that. I can get as many of those as I want. Someone who shows up generously.
And it's fair to say, and I think this is something I think you would both agree on. You may have a long term part of the desire of building a relationship might be for some business or purpose over time, but it's going in it with that, again, sense of generosity and that long term thinking, right? It's very different for you to sit down with a executive coach and saying, hey, love to pick your brain on a startup idea versus saying, hey, you seem like a really interesting person. I'm always thinking about different ideas, but like honestly, you seem like someone I'd love to just get to know. And that first hour, 2 hour conversation is just about getting to know each other's people, right? And seeing, are there areas that you can genuinely be of service to each other?
I love your point. I think it's a good one. And I'm thinking how there's definitely a gray area that we all need to learn how to navigate. So, like,
Mhm.
there was a time where I wanted to become a ski instructor and I wanted to train with ski instructors and what have you. And so, of course, I was meeting ski instructors and spending time with ski instructors who aren't my friends now. And obviously, I wanted to grow in that circle. And so I was aware I was getting something. But in order to be someone people wanted to include, I needed to show up not just as wanting to get something, right? So I'm
Yeah.
acknowledging there was a way I was growing and there was something I want to get out of that, in this case, entree into a world I didn't understand fully, but I was showing it as generous, right? And so the way I think we can set ourselves up for being the kind of person that others want to set up, the way we can set ourselves up for being the kind of person others want to spend time with is to bring an attitude, an intention of generosity to the conversation. And I actually do that explicitly when I'm meeting new people. And honestly, because I was trained by a mentor to do that. So I don't remember the first time we met, Zvi. I remember we spoke on the phone call because we met through business reasons. But when we actually met as people, almost certainly I brought an intention of, let me see if and then how I can help Zvi be who he wants to be. And the
Mhm.
answer may be no, right? You may be
Yeah.
more connected and have more access to resources than I can ever augment. But I could be surprised. And even if the answer is no, whether I say explicitly or not, it's going to read for you that this guy is actually looking for a way to be helpful.
Absolutely. And what sticks with that, and this is the other point I wanted to bring up, is that you did it in a very genuine way, right? You didn't sit down and saying, hey, what are your top three business problems and who do you want to meet that I can introduce you with to or something like that. It was like, hey, let me just get to know this person. And if something comes out of it where I can see there's an opportunity, a foothold to be able to help, great.
Yeah, you touched on a really good point. The We call that in writing is too on the nose. So what I'm doing is I'm listening for what you care about, and that's an emotion. You're going to be excited about it, or you'll be moved by it, or you're going to pause to like gather yourself. And when I notice what you care about, I'm going to assume that's important to you. And then I'm going to listen to see in a very gentle way, is there a way I can support you? So my favorite example of this is I was at a conference here in California while I was living somewhere else. And I met my friend Amit. And we were both at the time in our 30s at a conference that had people who were mostly much older than us. And so we were kind of bonding, mostly because we were the same generation. And Amit at the time was working at a very famous VC firm here in Silicon Valley, one that you've heard of. And Amit has a couple of degrees from Stanford, and he got his MBA at Harvard. So he's fully credentialed to be in that kind of glitterati VC universe. And guess what? I was studying religion on the other coast, right? I wasn't part of that VC universe. Not that I aspired to be, but I wasn't. And we hit it off at the conference, and he said, well, before you go back to the East Coast, come visit me. We should hang out before you leave. And I said, okay. And so I drove down to his office there in Palo Alto. And I remember I rode the elevator up in that very fancy office building of one of the most famous VC firms in the world. And I got there and I remember thinking in the elevator, what are we going to talk about? Right? Like, I'm not in tech and I'm not in investing, and I don't know what we're talking about now that we're not at the conference. And I was ushered into the library of this fancy office to sit down with Amit, and just two of us in the room. And I didn't know what we are going to talk about. So I did what mentors have taught me to do is I just asked about what he was working on that was exciting to him, not necessarily business wise. And it turns out Amit grew up in Brazil, and he noticed how many Brazilians didn't have access to good education. So now that he's successful in the business world, he's planning to someday start a school in Brazil. And I said, "Oh, I happen to know the president of this school, which is famous, and they have to do a lot of fundraising for what they're doing. Would that introduction help you to understand how you need to think about your fundraising to get a school started?" And he said, "Oh, that would be great. I would love the introduction." Again, I don't know if that friend's going to help him, but at least I can connect him with someone. Then it turns out that Amit has already started setting up a hospital in India to serve families that don't have health care. And he fundraises in America to fund the hospital. He has to do that every year. And I said, "Well, gee, I worked in Cambodia on some stuff. And I know people who started a hospital in Cambodia and they fundraised from New York to keep that hospital running. Would you like an introduction to them to understand how they think about cultivating donors and creating a community of support for a foreign hospital?" And he said, "That would be fantastic." And then Amit stopped the conversation and he said, "Charles, do you know how many people come into this room and offer to help me with what I'm doing in life?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't know." And he said, "Almost no one." And you know, Zvi, that I didn't offer that because I was doing some calculation on how it will help me ingratiate myself with someone at a famous VC firm, or because I wanted to get into tech, or because there was a quid pro quo. I just went into the room not knowing what we we're going to talk about and knew, well, if I start with listening for where he wants to grow and seeing if there was a connection, I would offer it. Maybe that would be a good conversation. And what it did is it cemented a friendship that we've had now for almost 20 years. And fun fact, years later, when I needed to move out to the West Coast, Amit offered me his guest room in his home in Palo Alto for me to land in for 1 month while I figured out how to make a new life out here. Of course, I didn't know that when I sat in his office for the first time.